Today I'm going to show you the journey of making melee attack in my game. Many people might think creating melee combat is easy. To be honest, I was one of those people, and I want to tell you before starting, it was not easy. From making 3D animations in Blender to programming with Unity, I made my own assets-like models, animations, and imported them into the Unity, binding them all together to finish this work. Throughout this process, I encountered many obstacles. Some of them made me frustrated and took days to resolve. I'm going to walk you through how I designed the game and the entire development process. By the way, my name is Jeff, and I'm making an apocalyptic survival game as a solo dev after my full-time job work. Before diving into the development, I decided to distinguish between normal mode and combat mode when designing the combat system. In normal mode, movement speed is faster and players can interact with objects like props. In contrast, combat mode has slower movement speed and allows players to aim attack with the mouse. Players can also attack with weapons during this mode. Now I need to create animations needed for combat. First, I need an idle animation of course, and since the character can move forward, backward, left and right, I need to create appropriate animations for each direction. These are just for movement, but I also need to create actual attack animations. I'm planning to divide weapons into three main categories: one-handed swords, one-handed blunt weapons, and two-handed blunt weapons. I might add more later, but for now, I'm sticking with these, so I also need to work on these attack animations for each weapon type. And if I were to create combo attacks for each weapon, I'd need to multiply this by 2. And yeah, of course, it would be cool if there are some combo attacks, but I decided to skip it for now because there are lots of things to do to finish the game anyway. Now I will create these listed animations, but having reference footage of the movements make creating natural animation much easier. For this project, I recorded myself performing the necessary movements and used gameplay recordings from Project Jumboid. Before working on the backward walking animation, I was quite worried as it looked challenging, but I found a useful tip while searching on Blender forums. You can play the forward walking animation in reverse and refine some details to easily create a backward walking animation. If you ever need to create a backward animation, you can use this method to make it easier. The side walking motions and attack animations took quite a long time. I repeatedly observed and modified them frame by frame until I was satisfied with the results. When working on game project, there are times when you want to compromise with yourself. You can either perfectionist your way through every detail before moving forward, or progress more quickly with the intention of polishing things later. For this project, I worked with the mindset that I might not have many chances to fix things later, so although I wasn't 100% satisfied, I tried to make as many improvements as possible before moving on. Now it's time to import and apply the animations in Unity. I started with the simplest ones first. I applied the combat mode idle and walk animations to check if they were created properly. Then modify the script so that when the player holds the control key, left control key, they enter combat mode, and when released, they return to normal mode. While applying the walking animations, I used the blending tree to make the character's animations transition naturally. However, this process wasn't perfect on the first try either. The animations look fine in Blender, but seemed a bit unnatural in game, so I had to go back to Blender several times to modify the animations, then reapply them in the Unity, repeating this process multiple times. Now it's time to apply attack animations, the most important thing. When creating animations, I worked on them so that only the upper body performs the attack motion, while the legs remain stationary. Because of this, if we simply set the character to play the attack animation when attacking, it looks very unnatural when moving and attacking since the legs don't move. But completely preventing movement during attacks isn't a good option either. We are making a survival game, and that would make the game too difficult and frustrating for players. Fortunately, Unity has a feature called Avatar Mask that helps apply specific animations to specific parts of the character, allowing us to play the attack animation for the upper body, while playing movement-related animations for the lower body. But this created a strange issue. I applied everything through Avatar Mask as I just described and tested it, but something was off. As you can see, the character does attack while moving, but the attack motion is facing a strange direction, rather than the one I'm aiming at. I thought I might have configured the Unity animation settings incorrectly, so I investigated various options but couldn't solve the problem. My initial confidence that this would be just an easy fix slowly disappeared, and a sense of despair began creeping in. I tried various approaches using LLMs, searched Unity forums for similar issues, and attempted to follow other solutions, but nothing worked. I wasted days on this problem, tried everything I could think of, and became increasingly exhausted to the point where I lost motivation to even touch it anymore. There are countless games where characters can attack while moving, so why couldn't I make it work? I felt completely frustrated. Then one day, while making various attempts as usual, and watching the strange animations play, I noticed something odd. Looking closer, the upper body direction seemed to be twisted toward the pelvis direction during the animation. This reminded me of something I read on Unity forums about how the root bone isn't included in the upper body masking in Avatar Mask. On a hunch, I rotated the root bone to face forward in one of the attack motions and tested it again in Unity. And finally, the animation played correctly with the character facing the right direction. I was so happy at the moment that I can still feel the joy now. All the stress and depression vanished instantly. Even though I had to completely revise all the animations I'd already created, I wasn't sad at all. I went back to Blender and happily worked on the animations again. You may have noticed that while I've completed the animation work, I haven't yet implemented enemies, health, and damage related systems. However, this part was mostly programming work I could bring in code from previous projects and modify gradually, so creating this wasn't that difficult. I also added a few debugging tools for development convenience. One is a damage area visualizer that shows the collision box where attack damage is applied, even in the game view. These collision boxes can be seen in the scene view, but since it's more convenient to see them during actual testing in the game view, I created this feature. This allowed me to quickly check whether my weapon's damage area has the proper size on the game screen. Another addition is debugging health text display. Checking each enemy's inspector individually would be too cumbersome, so although this won't be visible in the final game, I made it possible to check enemies' health during testing. Finally, it's time to refine some details. One issue I encountered was occasionally the damage collision box would activate and enemies would take damage even when the attack animation wasn't playing. This problem occurred because the timing of animation playback wasn't properly synchronized with the actual attack, especially when attacking while walking. The animator would sometimes prioritize playing the movement animation and not properly trigger the attack animation. While considering how to solve this issue, I decided to use animation events in the script to ensure attacks could only happen when the attack animation was actually playing. This approach synced the attack and animation timing nicely. In this video, we've explored how to add melee combat to our game. As you've seen, while it may appear simple, it actually required overcoming numerous obstacles and making repeated adjustments. For those of you working with Blender, I recommend avoid rotating the root bone to prevent experiencing the same issues I faced when working in Unity. I hope this video has been helpful for anyone who's encountered similar problems. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found this helpful, please like and subscribe. See you in the next video.